Welcome to Don't Scare the Newbies, a podcast where we talk kink, raw and unfiltered. I'm kirizal, a lifestyle submissive in a 24/7 dynamic who likes their kink heavy, intense and scary.
And I'm S, kirizal's dominant, who knows how to deliver all of the above.
And today we're going to be talking about Rules and Contracts Part 1, focusing today on the contract. Very excited to dig into this, and this is one that I think a lot of people will be interested in because I've talked about the rules a lot before, but never really shared much about our contract.
No, true. We're going to talk about how you've signed your life away to me.
Excellent.
So yeah, this episode is going to really talk about the formal structure that is a part of a lot of DS dynamics. A lot of those types of dynamics are based around rules and expectations that the dominant places on the submissive and that they agree together as part of negotiation. And I think for me, I think that's something that's really important. It's really important to have that formal structure to it so that everybody understands what they're getting into, everybody understands what's expected on both sides, because it's not just about imposing rules and setting limits for the submissive, but also kind of setting limits for the dominant as well. And the other side of rules is punishments.
Yes.
So kind of being really clear about the consequences of breaking the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you that having it very, not necessarily super formal, though I would say that our contract is definitely into the very formal wording category.
Yeah.
But even if it's not particularly formal language, having something to refer back to so that things are very black and white and clear, especially as these dynamics develop over time and become more complex. The expectations on everyone involved can be a lot to hold in your head. It would be very easy for things to get forgotten or get misinterpreted, or just for people to have different understandings of what they mean. So having something to come back to, be like, okay, this is what we agreed, is that working for us, is really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I think it sounds a little bit nerdy, I suppose, but having them written down is really important, especially as dynamics develop. For me personally, I don't think it's smart to start off a dynamic with 10 pages of rules and really detailed expectations and detailed requirements on both sides.
The 50 Shades approach, just turn out with a fully written contract, be like, bam, sign it.
Yeah, that doesn't just doesn't make for all sorts of reasons doesn't make sense to me, because it's a lot all at once. How do you possibly keep track of that?
Yeah.
So this kind of dynamic, that kind of DS dynamic or a total power exchange dynamic, the kind that we've got, doesn't need to have a massively formal contract in it, but at least have a keep note on your phone where the rules are written down.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is exactly where we started. It was literally a Google Keep note that was shared between us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we don't have the original one because we added to it over time. But from what I remember, the original one had about 5 or 6 rules on it. It wasn't formally written. It was very, very sort of light and very casual, the approach that we took to creating that. But it was still helpful to have a written record of it, so that things didn't get sort of agreed and then just drift out of our heads. I think having that and having had that throughout has been really helpful for me in making these things become part of routine and almost like muscle memory.
Yeah.
There are a lot of rules that we have that I now don't even think about because they are just a thing that I have done since pretty much day one of our relationship.
Yeah.
But it's still helpful to have that to refer back to.
Yeah.
So that we're clear.
Yeah. And we'll talk about rules in more detail in the next episode, but it started out really basic as well. It's just half a dozen things that you agree are important to you, whether that's really specific rules or the kind of things that we'll talk about today, the kind of the structure and the framework of your relationship. If you're really clear about those with each other at the start, that's a really strong start, and then you can build over time and get to the point where you are writing legal sounding documents.
And I think one of the things that's important to bear in mind is that we're going to be talking about a very heavy total power exchange dynamic, which is the point that we have reached and the point that both of us always wanted to reach, we were clear about from the start. But this same approach could be taken to dynamics that are a lot lighter than this and stop at 5 or 6 rules.
Sorry.
It's all right.
It's not staying where I wanted to stay.
Every time you adjust your microphone, it looks like you're putting nipple clamps on, which, given that I hate nipple clamps, makes me cringe, but it also entertains me. It's like we're setting up to do our kink podcast. Just got to put my nipple clamps on, get into the mood.
Well, you've got it really easy because you're always wearing low cut booby tops.
Yeah.
Which means you just kind of put it wherever you want. Because I usually wear t-shirts, I have to think about where I can kind of pinch the fabric and where it's going to sit so it doesn't fall over.
I have the opposite problem, though, where sometimes my top is too low cut and my microphone is too far away from me.
You're just a slut.
Yeah, whose fault is that, Mix?
You were born that way.
Yeah, but you have trained me.
I merely took advantage of the materials that I already had.
Yeah, that's valid.
Anyway, we were talking about contracts.
We were, yes, very important. So yeah, even if you've got a fairly light dynamic and you're not necessarily looking to progress towards something like total power exchange, even if the aim of a dynamic is to have maybe 5 or 6 rules and that's the stopping point, the approach we've taken of gradually ramping things up would still apply. It's just maybe going to take place over a shorter period of time with less being added.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think having things written down and having really clear expectations is valuable, even if it is something that is not 24/7, is not total power exchange, doesn't sort of impact on your life and your headspace to the degree that ours does. Getting that foundation right is just as important because it's still something that alters the kind of standard script of how a relationship runs. And it can be easy to get muddled up with that.
Yeah, but I think the type of relationship and the type of dynamic we have, I think having a proper contract written in the way that it is feels like a really important part of that because 24/7 total power exchange is not a light dynamic.
No, definitely not.
Regardless of how the rules work within that, having that kind of giving up that kind of control is a really kind of heavy thing. Having a contract really, in my head, really solidifies that it is an all-encompassing lifestyle thing that we're doing, and this is our life. And I think it was you that introduced the idea of a contract to me. Like, I was aware of them as an abstract concept, but it was something that you had in your previous relationship where you had a formal contract, and we talked about that kind of early on. And I think at that time it's not that I wasn't sold on it, but I kind of had questions about it. And I think, because I remember talking to you about the feelings I have about the words master and slave in a dynamic. And I think that kind of changed over time. The more that we leaned into and developed that greater degrees of power exchange kind of changed my view of the idea of a contract and the idea of an MS dynamic specifically.
Yeah. Which has been a really interesting journey to see you go on, because like you said, a contract is something that I've experienced before, and it's something that I really value. It wasn't ever on my list of we must have this or I'm not going to feel like the relationship's complete. But it's something that I feel like adds a lot, feels like a really strong commitment to make. I think particularly for me, because my preference and our preference was for collaring to happen quite early in the relationship. Collaring is a very serious commitment that I take seriously, and I wouldn't allow someone to collar me if I didn't see it as being the aim being a lifelong relationship. But I'm quite happy to make that commitment quite early on, where a contract is something that, just because of the level of complexity of it and because of the amount of control that certainly our contract and the previous contract that I was under include, you can't do that overnight. As we talked about, it's too much to take on and it's too big of a shift. So it's nice to have that milestone a little later in a relationship of we've had the commitment of the collaring, which is me saying that I intend to belong to you forever. And now we have the commitment of the contract that says I'm reaffirming that, and I am committing to the detail that comes around that, the structure that we have created over the period of time from the collaring to the contract is now something that I want to lock in and make a part of my life moving forward.
Yeah, and I think I went on a similar sort of journey, I suppose. You're right, collaring was something that we did pretty early on. Your collar is wonky, actually. As I am observing. Just fix that. There we go. So, collaring is something that's really important to me as well in that kind of dynamic. And as we added things to it, and I got more comfortable, I suppose, with the idea of a total power exchange, or grew into that kind of dynamic with you. The idea of the contract became more important as we went on, and the contract that you had in your previous relationship was really helpful because that's that was kind of where we started.
Yeah.
With it, you shared that contract with me, and we kind of went through it, or I went through it and said, yeah, there's some things in this that I would want to retain, some things I'd want to add, some things I'd want to take away.
Which I think is one of the things that people find really surprising about our relationship and the way I talk about developing dynamics in general, is that I'm very open about the fact that I think it's healthy and useful to talk about previous power exchange relationships that you've had.
Yeah.
When you're constructing your own, because nothing that anyone does is ever completely original.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn about what you want in relationships, not just in DS and MS and other BDSM relationships, but in relationships. You learn about what you want and what you don't through your previous experiences.
Yeah.
It would seem really counterintuitive to me to go, okay, we need a completely blank slate. We're never going to talk about my ex. We're never going to talk about your previous relationships. We can't use any of that, and everything we do has to be completely different, because before I was with you, I'd just spent 2 years figuring out what worked really well for me in a MS relationship.
Yeah.
Why would I throw out all of that learning when we can make use of it?
Yeah. You can build on it, keep all the stuff that worked really well, add things that are just for us, and get rid of the stuff that worked less well.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
And to be fair to your previous dynamic and that contract, I think a lot of the stuff that I took out wasn't necessarily that I thought, oh, that's a bad thing, I don't like that. It was just about preference, and actually a lot about kind of phrasing and the way that it was structured.
Yeah.
For me, kind of, I spent probably as much time thinking about the content as I did the structure of it.
Yeah, which I really like, because that contract was made from a template itself. So it had already been adapted from something that was from someone else's relationship.
Yeah.
And then me and my ex-partner put our own spin on that, our own language into it, the things that were part of our relationship. Yeah. And then you completely restructured it, changed a lot of the wording, and we put in the things that are personal to us as well.
Yeah.
So at each of those stages, the stuff that was retained and stuff that was lost, but it's become very much our own.
Yeah.
So it's much as it's important to learn from previous relationships, you also don't want to try to just copy and paste a previous dynamic onto a new relationship, because even if you look at it and go, yeah, that was perfect, like that was exactly how I like it, it's not going to be the same with different people. Mm-hmm. That's not how people work. So you need to bring your own personality and flavour into that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and the structure stuff is because I can help myself. In my professional life, I've spent a lot of time writing contracts.
Yeah,
and I know how I like contracts to be structured.
Yeah,
it's such a nerdy thing to say, but having really clear sections in it and having a really good flow to it and being really specific and using like legal language as well. I just really enjoy.
I really like that about it. It's really hot to me, and I really like how official it feels and how legal it feels, because that's kind of the point of the contract for me, is for it to feel really legally binding, although of course it's not.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point to pick up for all. It is structured like a proper contract, and I when I was drafting it, kind of using proper legal language and legal definitions. But it's really important to stress that although we refer to it as a BDSM contract, a contract of total power exchange, it is not a legally binding document.
No, and it can't be.
And it can't be. You couldn't rely on that as a defence to go, well, I was allowed to do these things to kirizal because the contract says.
Yeah.
And actually it would go the other way, probably.
Yeah, because we've essentially created evidence of your control over me, and because BDSM falls into such a legally grey area.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can actually be used against you. And you mentioned that it can't be used as a defence.
Mm-hmm.
It also can't be legally enforced.
Yeah.
You can't take me to court for breach of contract.
Yeah.
You can hit me with stuff for breach of contract.
Yeah, I can punish you for it.
Yeah, but you can't take me to court. So areas of the contract will break down the contract a lot as we go along, but things where it says that I can't, end the dynamic for any reasons other than those laid out in the contract. If I just pack my bags one day and walk out of the house, you can't take me to court for that. Yeah. It's not legal.
Yeah. And I think so it's really important to remember that. But having it set up in a way that it feels like that, and treating it with the seriousness that it is.
Yeah.
A proper legally binding document, I suppose, is I think is part of is a really helpful way of maintaining that kind of headspace and maintaining that kind of approach to your dynamic. I remember a little while ago, someone I know kind of referred to BDSM generally as sex LARPing.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time being a little bit offended by that, going, it's a little bit more than that. actually, but I get your point. But in this context, it kind of is, because we're playing at having a legally binding contract.
Yeah.
We know we don't, but we're treating it like it is.
Like you, though, I definitely see it as deeper than that. It's like, it is a choice for us to act as if it's a legally binding contract when we know that legally it's not. But there's more going on, for me at least, than just pretending. I internalize it in a way. And something that I talk about fairly frequently is that my submission often feels partially involuntary. Where when I start feeling submissive towards someone, that is often 2 or 3 steps ahead of where we've negotiated to be, because I just start to feel that disappearing of my autonomy. The same thing happens with the contract. The things that I've agreed to in that contract, the freedoms that I've given up and the commitments that I've made. Yes, you can't take me to court for it. Yes, if I tried to run away and you came after and abduct me and dragged me back, that's hot. You would go to jail.
Yes,
you would go to jail.
Yeah.
And rightly so.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I have the freedom to just ignore it, because my brain puts those constraints on me itself.
Yeah.
The ways that I can exit the contract are the ways that we've agreed I can exit the contract. The things that I can do, the freedoms that I have, are the ones that we've agreed. And although that can't be legally enforced, it's very self-regulating for me.
Yeah.
It's not a headspace that I can just switch on and off. It's not as simple as roleplay. I think there's a lot of people where kink is just roleplay for them, and that's completely valid. That's a great way to do it, and it's probably easier and lower maintenance.
Yeah,
sure.
Definitely.
But it's always felt like something deeper than that for me. It's a very core part of my identity and how I live my life. And when I enter into a power exchange dynamic, it becomes something very, very real, very, very quickly.
Yeah, same. And I think that's something that I've learned in especially in this relationship as well. Is I feel at my most comfortable when I have that kind of relationship. This is, of all the relationships I've ever had, this is the one where I felt that feels the most authentic.
Yeah.
And feels the most comfortable, and just this is how life should be. And that is it's partly down to you being pretty amazing. But it is down to that kind of, we're not playing at it, we're living it.
Yeah.
And it's an all the time.
We've talked about both rules and contracts as we've been chatting away there, and we are going to be doing a part 2 talking specifically about the rules. But it is something that we treat as 2 very distinct documents. There is a clear separation for us, where the rules are things that govern my behaviour. We don't really talk a lot about your behaviour in the rules. Your responsibilities come more into the contract.
Yeah.
And the rules are things that are more likely to change on a more regular basis. And we do add to it fairly frequently and change the wording of things fairly frequently. I think certainly, we're nearly 2 years into our relationship now, and those first 2 years have been a period of a lot of development and change as we figure out what we need, especially because for you, this is your first really heavy dynamic. So I had a bit more experience than you coming in, and knew that was exactly, as you were talking about, exactly what makes me feel most authentically myself in a relationship, and it was very much what I needed.
Yeah.
And it's been beautiful to watch you go through that process and figure that out about yourself as well.
Yeah.
Because I think it was, when we first got together, very much an unknown of how far along this path you would want to go.
Yeah.
And I was really comfortable with what you had to offer and the relationship that we were building, but I didn't know if we would reach total power exchange, so it was really exciting that we did.
Yeah.
But because of all of that learning that's happened there and creating something new together, the rules have changed fairly frequently. But by the time we got to writing our contract, which we did about 10 months into our relationship, there were certain elements that we knew were fairly fixed points that, 20 years down the line might change, and we might make some amendments to the contract, but they're not things that are going to be changing month to month.
Yeah.
They are the underpinning of our relationship.
Yeah.
That's what the contract is for us, is the structure that everything else is built around.
Yeah. Which is how good contracts work.
Yes.
You have a core contract, and then you have little appendices, which are the detail, which is the way that we've got as structured. And we're on to our second contract. As you said, we signed our contract about 10 months into our relationship. Our first contract we signed it for a year.
Yeah.
So that we gave it a good go for 12 months. And then we make a conscious decision about how that's feeling. That doesn't mean that we couldn't talk about it throughout the year, and we did. But I think because it was so new to me and like a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
To a lot of the stuff that's about me in the contract is stuff that I was doing anyway. But to have it so formal kind of felt like a really big deal.
Yeah.
And I was like, what if I can't do this? So we signed it for a year.
Yeah.
And then we recently reviewed it. I think we made some fairly minor changes.
It was mainly sort of wording tweaks and clarification.
Yeah. So we signed a new version of that recently, which is an open-ended contract.
Forever.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I really like that. That's just a feature of our relationship now. And we still keep it under review.
But with no requirement to sign a new one unless we have changes to make.
Yeah.
So this contract could potentially be the contract that we have for the rest of our lives.
Yep.
With how much we talk about kink and what giant sex nerds we are, I would be surprised if at some point we don't think about something we want to add to it or change.
Yeah.
I feel like there is a real risk that as we make this episode and the next one, because we're going to be looking at the contract and the rules in so much depth, we're going to finish recording these 2 episodes and be like, we need to make some changes. We need to change some shit here.
Yeah.
Hang on, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But it's good. We're getting a little bonus review.
A little bonus review, like the time that you talked about your cigarette limit, and somebody pointed out that your limit is 105, not 90.
Yes, it was when I was talking about the rules on TikTok. I was talking about my cigarette limit, which is 15 a day, or I confidently said 90 a week. We'd had that written down fair. I think we'd had that specific limit for at least 6 months.
Yeah.
I hadn't reduced in a while. And it was, to be fair, it was thousands and thousands of views on that video, and it wasn't until it'd been up for 3 or 4 days that someone actually did the math and said, if you're smoking 15 a day, that's 105 a week.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I was like, no, this is someone either taking the piss or someone who's just done really bad maths. There's no way we've both got this wrong, and it's passed a monthly review for 6 months without either of us noticing. And then I did the maths, which is quite simple maths, really.
Yeah, really simple.
Really simple maths. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I've never even noticed that the limit was wrong. But we then fixed it.
We have fixed it, yes. So shall we start talking about the contract itself?
No. She's eating the carpet mix. She's so hungry, she's eating the carpet. For fuck's sake.
No. Get away.
Seeing you with the cats gives me insight into how you would be if I was a brat. It's fascinating. Like, they get the Dom voice way more often than me.
So yeah, we're going to go through each of the sections of the contract one by one. And the first one, as with all good contracts, is actually talking about the contract. It is the overall agreement. So it kind of has a start date in there. It kind of names us as the parties to the contract.
Yeah, full government name in there.
Full government name in there, yeah. Which is terrifying. But also, as a lot of contracts do, kind of herein referred to as the owner, herein referred to as the slave. And it sets out that really broad overview of it. It sets the term of it, which is open-ended.
Yep.
On that version. And it's just one of those examples for me of one of those really nice things about like this is how a proper contract would start.
Sets the tone,
definitions, scope, dates, things like that. And I just got a little kick out of writing that bit.
That was the thing that I really enjoyed about the contract writing process with you, is that we both got a weird little kick out of it. Mm-hmm. It felt like it started as sort of, this is important admin, it's something that we'll value, but I don't think either of us had anticipated quite how horny we would get about it.
Yeah. It was dead exciting.
Yeah.
And it's quite hot, to say you bind, what does it say? The slave is binding itself totally and completely without limit and irrevocably in submission to the owner. Like, that's really hot.
Yeah.
Just as a sentence.
Yeah.
Proper legal speak, but really, really sexy.
Yeah.
With it.
I was just going to say, one of the things I really like about this section and about the contract is how it clarifies that you will be referred to as they with a capital T. Mm-hmm. Which is part of our protocol, and that I will be referred to as it. I love when you refer to me as it. I'm also a they, and sometimes you will say they, but when we're talking the formal structure of our relationship or when we're playing, I'm an it then, and I like that.
Yes, you are property. You are an object.
Yes, I am.
To be owned and used.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
So the next section is the affirmations, starting with mine. And these are the commitments that I am making under the contract and the things that I am agreeing to and confirming that I've understood. So it talks about the fact that I'm signing the contract of my own free will without pressure or coercion. Although my submission can feel quite involuntary at times, it's important when I'm agreeing to what that actually looks like on a practical basis, how I submit, the things that I will and won't include within that I'm doing it very clearly and consciously. There might be elements of my submission that don't fall within the contract or the rules that just organically happen, but when I'm making a commitment to do something forever, it's got to be the stuff that we've agreed. And along with that, confirming that I understand the contract as well, and that I want it to be enforced.
Yeah. I think there's some things in there that I really like about this section as well. You know, it's not just about you understanding the meaning and implication of the contract. There's some obligations in there for you to communicate with me, particularly if, you know, kind of, what does it say? Openly discuss with the owner if their use of it is causing undue distress or if it feels unable to fulfill the duties required of it.
Yes, and I like that doesn't give me the power to say you have to stop that. It's that I have a duty to communicate and be clear with you about what the impact of your behaviour is having on me.
Yeah.
And then, as we will come on to, you have responsibilities also within this contract to respond appropriately to that, but it's never as black and white as, if I don't like it, you have to stop. Because the whole point of this is about a very large, very significant transfer of power and authority.
Yeah.
So I don't want to have it be as simple as, don't want to do that anymore, and then it all stops. But the communication is there. Yeah. And all of this, it really sort of reaffirms that the contract has been created from a position of equality, where we're both making sure that the relationship we're creating together meets our needs. Yeah. There is a sort of pornified version of submission, I guess, that you hear people talking about, where it's like the submissive shouldn't have any needs. The whole point of being a submissive is just to be dominated. And it's like, but even if you are at that really extreme end of submission where you really don't feel like you have any independent needs in yourself, that is an independent need. That need to be completely dominated is a need that needs to be fulfilled. Yeah. So when we're creating that, I need to explain to you how I get that need met and how I get my needs met in general within the relationship. And then we're free to play in the space of, no, I have no control over what's going on. Anything could happen to me. Because we've already agreed what that needs to look like and feel like for both of us for it to be right.
Yeah, and it's a kind of slippery slope, that sort of assumption that the submissive has no needs or wants other than being completely dominated. And you see it a lot, kind of people being treated as king dispensers. Yeah. And in that kind of scenario, that's kind of how it would feel. Yeah. Is if you were just completely meek and neutral, it would feel strange. Yeah. To me, it's a bit like when people come forward and say, I have no limits, do anything you like to me. Okay, I'm going to chop your feet off then. Suddenly you've got limits. It's like, it feels
lack
like
of imagination.
Really weird kind of space to be in if it was all one way. Yeah. Because no relationship is like that. No. Doesn't matter how kinky it is, doesn't matter what the power exchange is like. No relationship works like that.
Definitely.
So why should this one?
Yeah. I like that this as well includes that I will trust you to protect my well-being at all times and submit unconditionally on that basis, and then that's reflected in one of the things that you affirm in your section about protecting my well-being. So the things that I am agreeing to in the contract balance the things that you're agreeing to. They're intertwined with each other.
And so there's that kind of underlying, we're both in it for the right reasons, we're both going to act in good faith as part of our relationship.
Yeah. And it comes back to that as well when it talks about me being free to ask questions, have discussions, giving you that feedback. It's not just about me saying, hey, that's distressing me and I don't like it. Can we talk about it? Which is important too. But also asking for clarification, opening up discussions, generally being able to take a lead on requesting things are reviewed if needed. It's not, once I've signed this, I'm now completely passive and all I can do is say I'm having a great time or I'm having a shit time. It's also, I'm still involved in the creation of this and anything that changes moving forward needs my input.
So I have a set of affirmations that I make as well. And this kind of felt really big for me because when you write some of this stuff down and you read it aloud, you think, shit, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's quite a lot of responsibility.
You have a really big job. Like I'm not a dominant, but I would be terrified of the responsibility that comes with being a dominant, particularly in a heavy dynamic. I think you handle it incredibly.
Thanks. But a lot of the stuff in this section, to be fair, a lot of the stuff in this section is about my responsibility to take care of you, and I suppose in recognition of the phenomenal amount of control and power that this contract gives me.
Yeah.
It's I have to do that. I have to wield that power and use that control in a responsible way. So, it literally said, I understand the contract and I will go into this in good faith and I will protect your well-being at all times. Although there is a really nice clause that follows that says, however, the owner may choose at their sole discretion, another great phrase that I like to see in contracts, to cause the slave suffering and distress.
Yeah.
Because that's part of how we roll within it.
I do love some suffering and distress.
You do. And I guess it balances out that big picture responsibility I have to take care of you as my property as defined in this contract versus I'm going to do some shit to you. I'm going to, for want of a better phrase, I'm going to use my power for nefarious ends.
I do love when you use your power for nefarious ends.
Which is always fun. So yeah, a lot of my affirmations here are about understanding the responsibility that comes with it, understanding the privilege actually of owning you within the context of the contract. It's like that's a big deal, and it isn't something that you give lightly. It's not something that you allow lightly.
Yeah, definitely.
And I have to, quite rightly, I have to recognise that for what it is, which is absolutely massive.
Because there's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, which can sometimes get a little bit cringe, depending on how it's used, but about submission is earned. You're talking about that?
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes people throw it around to basically almost like inflate their sort of role within the relationship to the point where they're more important than their partner. It's like, my submission is really, really important, especially like submission is a gift is another one that gets thrown around, which I like less. Yeah. And it's like sometimes those are kind of misused and used to sort of bolster people's ego and reduce the understanding of the importance of the dominant in that relationship and how their dominance is just as valuable and important and as much hard work, if not more sometimes. But also, yes, like the level of submission that I give does have to be earned, and it is a really valuable gift, which I would say that the same for your dominance. Like we need to give each other energy. There needs to be fair exchange there to bring out the best of those roles in us.
Yeah.
But the contract recognizing that, I think, is important because it is a big thing that I hand over. You have full control over pretty much every aspect of my life. And that's serious business.
That is a lot. Just on that, as a bit of an aside then, so alongside that kind of submission is earned and submission is a gift narrative that you see is the idea that actually the person who has all of the power in a DS relationship is the submissive.
Yeah.
Because following the logic that nothing happens to the submissive that the submissive doesn't allow to happen to them.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just interested in your view of that as well, because again, it feels a little bit cliche.
Yeah, and I think it's a massive oversimplification. I think, yes, nothing in a healthy DS relationship, in a consensual DS relationship, nothing will happen to the submissive that they haven't agreed, and they have all the power to stop things happening to them. But so does the dominant. The dominant's consent is really important. The dominant's well-being is really important. So I, as a submissive, can go, I am absolutely fine for you to chop my feet off. I'm not going to say that, but if I did, you as a dominant can go, hell no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not risking going to prison. I'm not risking you dying on me. I don't want the bloodstains on my carpet. Like, whatever your objections are, you can make them and you can say no. Both or all people in this kind of relationship have the ability to decide where those limits are and what they are and are not going to agree to. And unless you've negotiated the level of sort of total power exchange, consensual non-consent stuff where I've agreed to give up some of my rights to revoke consent, if that hasn't been specifically agreed, both people also have the right to revoke consent at any time and put a stop to it. And even in the level of dynamic we have, there are circumstances in this contract that do give me that right.
Yeah.
I think a healthy DS relationship starts from a position of equality and everyone involved looking to get their needs met, acknowledging that those needs are very different from each other and should balance each other, where your need to take control balances with my need to give up control. And then you build a relationship together where everyone's consent is being taken into account and what rights people have to put a stop to that are very clearly defined and agreed. And in that situation, then, there isn't one person who has more control over that than the other. There will be one person who ends up with more authority than the other, can make things happen to the other, and that person is the dominant, not the submissive. But it's coming from a place of what everyone needs is really, really important here. Let's make sure that that's honoured.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can kind of see where that narrative comes from, because what I think what that is trying to combat is the entitlement of people who call themselves dominant.
Yeah.
You go, well, you are submissive, so you just do what I say, and fuck all the rest of it.
And to combat the social stigma around it as well, where the perception from the outside of kink looking in can be very much this is just people abusing other people who are maybe very vulnerable and very passive and just allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, no, when this is done right, I can understand people wanting to flip it and go, it's the submissive who's in control. But actually, in a healthy relationship, the starting point is no one is in control, and any control that anyone gets over the other is consensually agreed.
Yeah.
So it's not flipping it around, I don't think is helpful.
Yeah. It's a good jumping off point, but it's as a teachable moment, it lacks nuance.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, and unsurprisingly, I agree with you. It is one of those things where you see it on the internet so often, and you go, yeah, but really?
Yeah.
It's more nuanced than that. So a couple of other things linking back to your affirmations.
Sorry.
So you have a responsibility to communicate and be open in there. My responsibility is to do the same, but also to receive that communication in good faith and act accordingly. So, whenever you have an opinion or whenever you have something that you want to say about our relationship, about our dynamic, about the things we're doing, I will treat that with respect. Yeah. And I will give it careful consideration. Mm-hmm. And actually, if you do say, this is too much, I can't cope with this, whether it's a rule or a scene or something I do to you, you communicating that to me, I don't see that as a sign of failure in you. I won't be disappointed in you. Yeah. I think, which is really important. Yeah. And again, it doesn't guarantee that you're just going to go, okay, yeah, that's fine, I'll change it. Yeah. You receive it in good faith, you take it under careful consideration, you're not disappointed in me for asking. But there might be, this has never happened, but there might be times where I say that and you go, actually, I think what's going to be best to develop you, to encourage your growth, to help you deepen your submission, is I'm going to push this a little bit. And I want you to keep trying. Yeah. Because you still have the final say. But what this does say is that you're not allowed to just dismiss it. Yeah. Or get mad at me for asking. Yeah. Which I like. Yeah. And if you think about it, a lot of this stuff just boils down to, well, that's how good relationships work, isn't it? Yeah. I have that a lot, especially when you say really nice things about me. I go, well, that's just what you do. Oh, you're really good at this, you're really good at that. I'm like, well, yeah, because I'm a normal human being. Aside from my ridiculous perversions, I'm a normal human being. Why would I do anything different in that? But in this context, it just feels like a really important point to make of, you're going to give me all of this power, and that doesn't mean that I can act with impunity and get mad at you if you're not being a good submissive. So the next section is general, and this is covering things that I would consider essentially the foundation rules. These are the things that I am required to do that are not in the rules themselves. They're not things that are likely to change anytime in the next good few years. Mm-hmm. A lot of these refer back to the rules as well, so they'll give a kind of general underpinning rule that is a part of the foundation structure of the relationship, but then the specifics of that are defined in the rules because the specifics might change, but the baseline doesn't. So it starts out strong by saying that I am the exclusive property of the owner and have no rights other than those granted to me by the owner or set out in this contract, which I love. Just love that. Yeah. And again, that's just a really cool kind of legally sentence, isn't it? It's really nice. Yeah. And then following on from that, it talks about free use. So there is, in the next section, a lot more detail around free use, but states that I have no rights to revoke consent for free use, except those set out in the contract. It talks about domestic service, which is something that we will probably do a whole episode on at some point, because it is one of my absolute top kinks in a really interesting way, because it's very much not sexual for me. Yeah. But the need to serve and make myself useful around the house is something that I consider top priority. So that explains why it made it into the contract. Mm-hmm. It references that the specifics of that are laid out in the rules, because exactly what you want me to do around the house might change.
But the basic expectation is that one of the elements of my role is domestic service. And so that is in the contract. It talks about a requirement of me to immediately obey any order or instructions, perform any actions demanded by the owner. Again, because just because we think we've thought of everything we possibly can for the contract and the rules doesn't mean that you're not going to want me to do other stuff sometimes.
And it's one of the things is how we do that.
Yeah.
Kind of our internal language, I suppose, or the language of our relationship, is probably very different to your average non-kinky type of relationship, where if I see that a task needs to be done around the house outside of this context, I will either do it or I will say this needs to be done. Who's going to do it?
Yeah.
Whereas within this context, I will identify that the litter trays need doing. I will say, I need you to deal with the litter trays today.
Yeah.
Not even a please or a thank you.
Yeah. Which has been another thing that I've loved seeing develop in you, because very early on we introduced domestic service into the relationship. Even before we were living together, when I came over, I would wash up.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what I do when I'm submissive to someone. But when you first started embracing that, it was very much, please, can you do this?
Yeah.
And you would always ask, are you comfortable doing all of that yourself? You were still very much giving me an out.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, sometimes if I've got a to-do list with 20 things on it, you do still sometimes say, do you need any help with anything? Which is very sweet. But I never take you up on that because it feels important to me to fulfill that role.
Yeah.
And you have got more comfortable with that over time, where you don't, it's not a question anymore.
Yeah.
You've really embraced that.
Yeah, that took some getting used to.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to lie, having a domestic servant is pretty amazing. I would recommend it to anyone who is thinking about getting into a total power exchange type of dynamic to make sure that you include domestic service in it, because I don't need to do the laundry.
Yeah.
I don't need to do the dishes.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet, to be honest.
The other day you couldn't remember which bin was the normal rubbish and which one was the recycling, because it's been that long since you had rubbish in the bin.
Yes, I did have a moment of I've completely forgotten where these things go. Just a complete aside, it's something that I'm conscious of as well.
You don't want to be de-skilled.
I don't want to be completely useless.
It is one of the risks that's worth talking about. I know my ex had trouble when we split up because we'd had domestic service as part of our relationship, and she'd gone from living with family to living with a submissive to living on her own.
Yeah.
I mean, she only just found out she's got a Hoover in her flat.
Literally.
She's been living there for years. I only just found out she's got a Hoover. So yeah, it is a risk. There are risks.
What I really liked about that exchange is where you pointed out that the Hoover has lived there longer than she has.
Yeah, and she genuinely had no idea. But yeah, the risks in kink that people are really conscious of is things like, if you put a plastic bag on someone's head, they might suffocate and die. Obvious physical risks. Some of the risks that can really creep up on you is things like, if you haven't had to do any of your own housework for a decade and then your partner leaves you, dies, gets really sick, you have to learn life skills from scratch.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff like that in power exchange that can sneak up on you, where elements of independence become eroded, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think all humans are quite interdependent, and it's healthy. We're a social species, but being conscious of it is important.
Yeah. No, I agree. Anyway.
I will continue. This section also talks about the fact that I will accept punishment for breaches of the rules. I would say I probably go above and beyond on this one, because I'm usually the one reminding you that I should be punished and shouldn't be let off things. Though you have worked on being stricter with discipline, which I really appreciate as well, because that's something that I need for my sanity.
Yeah. It's another kind of interesting thing that I've learned, I suppose, is because quite often in the earlier stages of this, you would break a rule that was you needed to do a task today and you run out of time, or you haven't got the capacity to do it, or whatever. And I would kind of be like, life happens. It's not like you deliberately set out to break a rule.
Yeah.
So it was like, it's that difference between life just happening and malicious non-compliance with the rule you deliberately set out to break a rule, therefore you should be punished for it. And I think what was important to hear from you was that, no, actually, even if the situation was entirely out of my control, I still didn't do what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And therefore there should be consequences. Otherwise, the rules become less important.
Yeah. And it means next time I might just go, well, I know I can get away with it and I can't be bothered, and I don't believe I would ever do that consciously. but it's something that starts to creep up and drift. And
Yeah.
so much of how dominance and submission works is I see it very much as an exchange of energy, not just of power and authority.
Yeah.
Where we're both having to feed this, we're both having to give 100% of ourselves into this to create what we create. If I'm not giving 100% to following the rules, and then you're not giving 100% to the discipline, and then I'm not giving 100% to following the rules because I know that you're not giving 100% to the discipline, and then you get so used to me breaking the rules that you give even less to the discipline.
Yeah.
It starts to unravel very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's something that it was never a criticism exactly. It was more of I wanted to reassure you that what I needed was for you to step into that power. Because it's good for me. It's not you being harsh, it's not you being cruel, and it's not you being not understanding. If you were like shouting at me and calling me a useless piece of shit for breaking a rule, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But you saying, okay, I understand how that's happened, I'm not mad, but there's a consequence to that.
Yeah.
Is very beneficial to me.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
This section also covers that I need to be completely honest and truthful with you, which is something that comes very naturally to me, but again, I like having it formalised. Again, it talks about me needing to show you respect at all times, whether that's to your face or how I speak about you privately with other people, which is something that, again, I would just do, but I have noticed from having this as something that's formal, how relatively uncommon that is. And I don't mean people are being nasty about their partners or anything like that, but how common it is for people in relationships to sort of roll their eyes and take the piss out of their partner and things like that. And I will make jokes. Jokes are different. Things about your love of spreadsheets and stuff.
Yes.
I will.
Do love a spreadsheet.
Absolutely have a little laugh about that, but not contempt. There's a very clear difference between making fun of your partner in a loving way and showing them contempt. Contempt is surprisingly common in how people talk about their partner when they're not present. And I don't think it's generally with any kind of malice behind it. People, I think, are really not that conscious of it, but because this is something that is part of the contract. I think that's something that I would never allow to creep in because it's against my responsibilities that are in the contract. It's not something that can just sneak into my way of talking about you without being conscious of it.
Yeah. And we watch the silly little reality shows on Netflix, don't we? And quite often we will look at each other and go, these two don't sound like they just don't like each other. Why would you be in a relationship with a person that you just don't like? What's that about?
And this section also lays out that I am required to serve in general, not just the domestic service, but being of use to you in general, both in public and in private. Obviously, in public, it's in ways that are socially acceptable and can be done discreetly. So, for example, free use for sexual service is not going to be something that we do in the middle of a crowded restaurant.
No.
But me fetching you a drink might be.
Yeah. So the next section is specifically about free use.
Yes.
This section goes into that in a lot more detail. And again, this is as much about kind of total power exchange and that kind of headspace of control as it is about just being really hot.
Yeah.
So it starts off literally, the slave is a free use sexual object for the owner. It talks about how I can essentially do anything I like to you.
Yeah.
Make you do anything I like, as long as it doesn't violate your hard limits.
Yeah.
Which are pretty limited.
Yeah, it's a short list.
It is a very, very short list. It has some caveats in there about actually you should communicate when you're feeling physically or mentally unwell.
Yeah.
As in line with your responsibility to be open. But actually the decision rests with me.
Yeah. And that one is honestly, out of all of the rules that I have to follow and the responsibilities I have under the contract, telling you when I'm sick is one of the hardest ones because I know you'll go easy on me and I very rarely want you to. Like if I'm really, really ill, if I've got like a proper blinding migraine, then I want to communicate that to you and I really don't want you to slap me around the head, for example.
Yeah.
But if I'm just feeling a little bit under the weather, every time I have to tell you because it's my responsibility, I am just dying inside. It's like, I am not getting hit today. I am probably not getting any sex today. I'm not going to get ordered around and made to sit on the floor. Like, I'm not even going to get put in the dog crate. Nothing's going to happen to me today because you've been starting to lean into free use a little bit more and started to push a little bit more, but still I know your instinct when I'm sick is to be really easy on me. And I'm like, if I could just not tell you, if I could just lie, if I was allowed to do that, I totally would.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I really like about that clause in the other section is it isn't just about being honest. It's really specific. You have to tell the truth. You cannot lie. You cannot lie by omission.
Yeah.
It does require you to be really open and honest about that. Some of that is just about control.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is about, well, actually, if I've got all of the power, I need all of the information so that I can wield that power responsibly.
Yeah.
And I think, well, you are right that if you tell me that you're poorly, I will tend to go a little bit easier on you. And that's something I'm trying to find the right balance with. So like how poorly is too poorly.
Yeah.
I think our thresholds for that are clearly in very different places.
Yeah.
The bar is a lot lower for me for you to be too poorly to want to do something. Partly because when I'm poorly, the last thing I want to do is have sex.
Yeah.
I just want to die on the couch whenever I'm poorly. Whereas that's not your experience.
No, I'm pretty much always up for doing some stuff. I generally, if I'm feeling ill, my ideal would be for you to take it a little bit easier on me, but still have rough sex, still do kinky stuff.
Yeah.
Just maybe things like not hitting me in the face if I've got a headache.
Yeah.
Like things like that. That's not going to make me actively worse, but suffering through it a little bit is enjoyable to me. And if I've got a fever, I'm always horny.
Yeah.
I get proper feral when I've got a fever.
Yeah.
So it is the worst. There's been a couple of times when I've had flu, and all I want to do is play non-stop.
Yeah.
Like, I need you to take it a little bit easy on me because I'm still kind of dying, but I want to do stuff every day.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I'm going to tuck you up in bed,
Yeah.
and that's fine. And it's like, I haven't come in a week and I've got a fever, please.
Yeah. Which is also a fun way of doing orgasm control and orgasm denial. If you are too sick, you are too sick, you are a poor baby, you need to rest.
Hate that.
So this section also talks about safe words. So you do not have access to a safe word within our dynamic when in private. You are still required to communicate. You're expected to communicate when you feel that you're at your limits. But what I do with that information is my choice.
Yes.
Which might include continuing.
Yeah.
With it. Again, I don't think that's something necessarily, other than in a specific scene where that's the point. I don't think that's something that I've kind of pushed too far. When you say that you're having a really bad time and you're kind of reaching your limits, I do default to dialing back a little bit because I think that's the responsible thing to do. And I think one of the things that I have had to spend a lot of time thinking about is just because I can doesn't mean I should.
Yeah.
And where does that line sit? Where's the line between I can and I will become something that would be really hot and fun and would be distressing to you, but ultimately in a way that is enjoyable to you?
Yeah.
And when does because I can, I will become actually distressful?
I'm definitely seeing you grow in confidence with that. There was obviously the unhinged whipping that we did at camping, but that was very pre-negotiated, where you were not going to stop.
Yeah.
But just when we're playing in general, you check in less. You are better at reading the difference between I'm having a bad time, but it's the kind of bad time I wanted to have.
Yeah.
And that is a much bigger reaction than I expected. So let's ask some questions about what's going on there.
Yeah.
I think in the past, if I started like properly sort of crying and hyperventilating during a scene, you would at the very least have checked in.
Yeah.
Where now, if you've been hitting me hard enough that was an expected reaction, you just kind of get on with it. The times when you tend to check in is more if we're doing something that was planned to be fairly light, and then I start having a really strong reaction to it.
Yeah.
You'll tend to sort of ask, like, is this because something's going wrong, or are you just having a low pain threshold that you kind of want to know what's going on?
Yeah.
Which is useful and important. And you've definitely got more comfortable with keeping me in that genuinely bad time zone.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you can tell that I'm not like having a full-on mental health crisis over it.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm suffering, but in the way that we both want me to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think part of that has been you learning to read me really well as well, so you can see that fine line. Yeah.
I think that just comes with time and experience, doesn't it? Of kind of recognizing how you respond to different things.
Yeah.
So within the context of you not having a safe word and not being able to revoke consent, there is still a caveat to that about when that applies in private.
Yeah.
So if we're playing at a venue, if we're going to a public play event, we default to the house rule that the house safe word is available to you.
Yeah.
You have a choice about whether you use it or not, but in order to comply with the rules, as you would expect anyone else to do, that safe word applies. And if there are situations where you are playing with other people, you have access to the safe words red and amber at all times, even if I'm there.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair on other people to impose kind of no safe word on them, but also allows for that little bit of extra safety.
Yeah. And just as we didn't go no safe word until we'd been together for quite a while, and you were good at reading my reactions, and I had a high enough level of trust that I could handle things that I maybe couldn't with a casual partner.
Yeah.
If I'm playing with someone else, my ability to feel comfortable playing with no safe word is going to be quite different.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the last part of this section on free use is about, in good legal speak, third parties.
Third parties.
So really clear expectation in the contract that you don't have any other sexual or play partners except on my instruction.
Yeah.
So you don't seek play or sexual play or kinky play with other people independent.
Yeah.
There's a clause in there about how that works. You know, if you are if you are approached by someone for play, your response is to direct them to me.
Yeah.
And if that person isn't willing to do that, then you decline their approach.
Yeah, which is something that is always a source of controversy in kink spaces, but it's something that is very important to me for various reasons. Partly it's about the fact that I completely see myself as your property. So the idea of someone coming to me as a piece of property and asking to use me, which is how I would perceive that,
Yeah.
just doesn't feel the right way around. They need to come to you first out of respect, and I understand the sort of opposing view on that is they don't want to become part of someone's dynamic. But if you are asking to play with someone who is owned, you are part of the dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
You are, even if you're not comfortable with that, don't play with people who are owned. You know, if you're, because of the level of power exchange that we have and the way that I see myself in relation to you, there is no way of playing with me that doesn't involve you.
Yeah.
Because I do not fully exist as a whole person outside of you.
Yeah.
And if that's not comfortable for people, if that's not something they want, then that's absolutely fine. It just means we're not compatible. Another element of it for me, though, is a safety thing, because of the way that submission works for me and the way that I get into this place at this stage of our relationship when we've been together a while, where we don't use safe words, where I don't have the right to revoke consent, where we have absolute 24/7 free use ongoing in our relationship. I am quite conditioned not to say no to very much, unless it's for fun. Unless we're doing something where you want me to say no. I'm very, very compliant and very obedient, and it would be very easy to slip into that headspace with someone else that I was playing with or negotiating play with, where I'm not very good at asserting my own boundaries. So having some oversight from you is actually a protective factor for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also just a comfort thing as well. Like, the thing that I dislike when I'm single and when I'm actively seeking play is I don't particularly like being sexualized by strangers. I don't like the sort of flirty banter and stuff that happens early in the process. I find the early stages of anything quite stressful and difficult. And I like to have as little involvement in that as I can. So being in a position where you can just lend me to someone, and yes, I still have to be involved in negotiation because you have to. That's the thing you have to do. But where you have done the initial part of that and you have the final approval on it, and I just have to express some preferences and opinions in the middle, it feels a lot more comfortable and safe for me.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I was just going to say, you aren't completely absent from that process. If somebody approaches me to say, "Oh, I want to play with kirizal," or I tell you, you need to go and play with that person, do something with that person, you're involved in that process of how that would feel for you, what you would do, the kind of the negotiation that you would expect to see if you were doing it fully independently for yourself.
Yeah.
It's the start and the finish of that.
Yeah.
Where I have the control. Everything comes through me. I have the final say. Yeah. And it is a dead interesting thing about that kind of, when kind of people get a little bit up a height about it, going, well, I don't consent to being part of your dynamic. And it's like, well, at this point, you're not. We're saying this is the price of admission. Yeah. Pay it or don't. Yeah. It's purely a compatibility thing, I think. Like, either people are comfortable with you having that oversight, or they're not. Yeah. And if they're not, there are loads of people who negotiate DS relationships where the dynamic stops as soon as any interaction with another person's happening. So if one person, whether it's the dominant or the submissive, is negotiating play with another play partner, apart from keeping their partner informed of it, being transparent and honest, they have no involvement, and those people exist. Go play with them. Yeah. You don't need to play with me. And that's perfectly, that's a totally valid way of doing it. It's that kind of pearl clutching, oh, that violates my consent. It's like, no, I'm describing to you how my dynamic works. If you don't want to be a part of that, don't proceed any further. Yeah. No one's consent has been violated at this point. You don't need to consent to other people's boundaries. No. That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah. It's and the last bit of that is the exact opposite, because there's a clause in there about me.
Yeah.
I have the absolute right to, we should probably say seek, actually, in there.
You can't just grab them.
It makes me sound a little bit predatory. So for the avoidance of doubt for our listeners, I have the absolute right to seek other sexual or play partners.
Yes.
And my only responsibility to you in that respect are to make you aware of those plans and to take necessary precautions to safeguard our health.
Yeah.
So making sure that I'm tested, making sure that other people are tested, making sure that if I do things that involve bloody impact, that I'm careful with the implements that I use, all of that sort of stuff. Which again, I just think is a really good juxtaposition. I like to use big words, don't I?
Yes.
In on this podcast, of where for you, your rights in this regard are really, really restricted, and I have lots of control over how that goes. But I can do what I like within a couple of pretty standard parameters.
Yeah. Like, don't come back and give me a disease, and don't lie to me about it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Like as situations go, that's pretty cool. And again, that's something that was really important, felt like it was really important to you, for me to have that freedom, even if you didn't have that freedom yourself, because you didn't want that freedom yourself.
Yeah.
But it's been a dead interesting thing for me to think about for myself. Of it's actually quite nice to have that permission within a relationship, to have that level of trust within a relationship, that actually I could just do that.
Yeah.
I could just go off and do that. But it has also forced me to reckon with the perception of myself that I have, that I am not kinky enough, cool enough, or attractive enough for that to be relevant.
Which is exactly
relevant.
Which is exactly why I wanted you to have it. There are other reasons as well. Like I like that difference in power and freedom. So I enjoy the fact that I can't do that and you can. But also, very quickly after I started dating you, I realised that you needed your confidence and your self-worth to be higher. You needed to work on that. And this does force you to confront that, because if you want to fully enjoy the freedom that gives you, you have to accept that you're a desirable person that multiple people will want to play with and fuck. Yeah. And you must learn that. You must learn it.
This seems like a wild... Even though I know that is objectively true. Yeah. Like that has happened.
In your life, yes.
In my life, in the time that we've been together, I have played with and done kinky things with other people while I've been in this relationship with you. So there are some people out there who like me, who think I am sufficiently of value to do that with. Yeah. So even though I know that is objectively true, I still really have to kind of confront that and reckon with, if I'm going to approach other people, or if I'm going to accept approaches from other people for those kind of things, that, like I say, I am kinky enough, cool enough, and attractive enough for that to happen. It's a really weird space to be in my head. Yeah. And I think another reason that I like this imbalance, the way that it is because you have more years of experience of kink than me, but I have a larger number of previous kinky partners. I've had a previous total power exchange dynamic. I've done a lot of very sort of casual one-off hookup play. And even like pre-kink for me, I've also had a lot more sexual partners than you, because I used to be a sex worker, and I've had a couple of truly epic slut phases, like 5 hookups in a night level slut phases. So I don't expect that your body count is going to catch up to mine. But I think it's good for you to have the option to continue to rack up some experience where I've probably had my fair share. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, if your body count does catch up to mine, I'll be very impressed. Yeah, that would really take some doing. I don't think I am, even if I accept that I am kinky enough, cool enough, and attractive enough, I don't think I'm that. Or at that level. Not social enough. Not social. That is my biggest yes. Thank you for that. So the next section is all about rules and protocol, and just as we've got a separate document to actually cover these in detail, it's important to create the underpinning structure
that I keep going on and on and on about what those are actually for and how they function. We don't just have a list of rules, we have the structure around it about how those are used and makes that make sense. So it obviously references the document and that it is separate to the contract, that lists those and how they are enforced. And the purpose of those, it says, is to define the standards that the owner requires, expects, and demands the slave to live and abide by at all times and in all situations for the duration of the contract, making it really, really clear that those rules are not optional, they are not just there some of the time, they are as important as the contract, they are just more likely to change. It also mentions that all of the rules apply equally, because much as we aim to set up the rules so that they're consistent with each other and don't create any kind of conflicts or disagreement, it is possible that there might be times where we haven't fully thought through the implications of some of those rules, and a situation might come up where they appear to be in conflict with each other, and it then specifies how to deal with that. So I would seek instruction from you on what we do with that and how you want me to prioritise those rules.
And again, it's one of those things where you have input into it. You can raise questions and raise concerns. But I have the final say on how that goes.
Absolutely. And it mentions in this section you can also give other instructions or orders to comply with. So I cannot use as a defence, well, that's not a rule, so I don't have to do it. I do occasionally say that because it's fun.
You do.
But then I get on with it.
Then you get on with it, And again, another one of my favourite little terms of legalese, shout out to H at my former employer. The owner may, at their absolute discretion.
At their absolute discretion, yes.
Although, to be fair, I think the phrase that person used to use was at their sole discretion, but at their absolute discretion. Just a lovely little bit of legalese that I very much enjoy.
Yeah.
Because I'm a nerd.
And something that I really like that's in here that we kind of forgot was in here, it was in the original template that I used, it was in my contract with my ex, and then we just carried it over into this one and then kind of both forgot about it for a good while. Was if the slave cannot immediately obey an instruction or rule, it must kneel in front of the owner and state why it cannot complete the instruction and submit to the owner's judgment. Which is really, really, it's a really hot little bit of protocol. And we sort of forgot it was there. And it became quite informal for a while, where if there was something that I couldn't do or that I needed some flexibility on, I would just go, hey, is it all right if I do the washing up tomorrow because I'm tired or something like that? And you would go, yeah, that's fine. Or, no, actually, I need it done now. And we would continue on with our lives. And then we sort of, at a review at some point, we were reminded of this. And like, actually, let's start doing this. And I love that now. Often the outcome will still be, it's fine, do it tomorrow. But it's still that reminder of my position and my role.
That little bit of protocol. Kind of sprinkled into daily life. And I don't know how we forgot about it. I guess it's one clause in a 6-page, 2,500 word document, I suppose. So you're not going to remember all of it.
I think it's because it's something we weren't already doing. It's something that we hadn't thought of until we were looking at the contract, and that was already there in the one that you were using as a kind of jumping off point. And we talked about it, like, do we want to take this out because we don't do it? It's like, actually, no, let's leave it in and do it. And then we immediately forgot about it. Which is why actually looking over this stuff regularly is good, because it brings it back into the forefront of your mind and go, no, let's do the thing.
No, I agree. It's really good and kind of hot as well.
It is.
Having you kneel in front of me and beg for absolution. It's quite nice.
I like that. And this section also talks about punishment, which is again something that we lay out in a lot of detail in the rules, which we'll be talking about in the next episode. But in the contract, it talks about your responsibility to enforce the rules with all of the authority that you have. And that I can expect to be punished for each and every breach of the rules, which is about both setting my expectations that there will be consequences to bad behaviour, but also again setting out that responsibility to you to enforce that discipline, because that's something that I thrive on. It mentions that you will ensure that the punishment is proportionate to the breach that led to it. So you're not going to necessarily pick the harshest one on there and apply it to the harshest degree that you can for some minor slip up.
There's something about kind of cumulative rule breaks as well. So you're right. If you forget your medication once, fairly minor punishment. If you forget it 5 times, then actually in a short space of time, then actually that's where that proportionality comes in and going, you need to learn to stop doing this.
Got to teach me to learn.
Got to teach you to learn. I really like that. Kind of going through it now, like the thought that has gone into it is enormous. Considering it was over a year ago now that we did it.
We put a lot of work into it. I remember it was quite a long process, and it was a really fun process. And this also talks about changes to the rules as well. So Either of us can suggest new rules, and it also does give you the right to, at your absolute discretion.
Absolute discretion. That's the third time in one section that I've used that. I was really enjoying that.
You're enjoying that one, yeah. But at your absolute discretion, you can add, remove, or amend any rule.
Yeah.
In realistic terms, there is always a discussion around it. But again, it's that sort of confirmation of the power that you have, that you don't have to seek my input.
Yeah,
you have to listen respectfully to it if I give it.
Yeah.
But you can just say, hey, there's a new rule. It's in there now. Start following it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can have opinions on it, but you have the final say.
Yeah. And again, it's not necessarily a power that I've used a lot. I have threatened it a couple of times, but over silly things.
Yeah.
I feel like rather than...
You've definitely threatened to put it in the rules that I can't steal your clothes.
Yes. Yes, and then you have made the really good point that you look quite good in a lot of my jeans. So
yeah.
Which does take the wind out of my sails ever so slightly. So then the next section is about limits and exclusions. So it talks about this is a lot about my responsibilities within the contract. So we will both always abide by any hard limits that are set out in the rules, and there are some hard limits set out in the rules, but not many. Making sure that we're taking reasonable steps to protect each other's safety, and only responsibility for me to make sure that I don't submit you to any act or do anything to you without kind of thinking through and discussing the risks that are involved. As we've talked about in previous episodes, our approach to kink kind of broadly aligns best with RAC, so risk aware consensual kink. It is about understanding the risks and acting accordingly. Yeah. Which is really important to both of us. And then there are some things in there about kind of the wider our place in the world. Yeah. I suppose, which kind of sets some limits and exclusions around our contract. So I'm not going to make you do anything which is going to it could result in a criminal charge or a conviction. Yeah. And we've specifically said likely to result in criminal charge or conviction because there's a lot of kink that falls into some legal grey areas. Yeah. So we're not taking things off the table just because they potentially could lead to that. It's things that are likely. Yeah. So telling me to go and get naked in the middle of a public street, for example, would be very likely to get me arrested. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I'm not going to ask you to do that. So I'm not, equally though, not going to make you, I won't submit the slaves or won't make you do anything or do anything to you that is going to violate or likely to violate the consent of other people. Yep. Or do things in a setting where other people aren't able to consent prior to it taking place. Yep. So, kind of that really is talking about kind of kinking in public spaces. Yeah. And there's everyone has a line there, I suppose, in terms of that. I guess it's back to something that is in an earlier part of the contract about kind of observing protocol in a way that is considered socially acceptable or acceptable in the situations that we're in. Yeah. That part of it is about being subtle and mindful of where you are. Yeah. This part is more specifically about actually not doing things which people won't have consented to. Yeah. In public spaces. And the line for me around that is things that definitely shouldn't happen in public is nudity, sex acts, and acts of violence. Yeah. Things that people are likely to find distressing to witness. Yeah. I don't personally think it's a violation of consent to be weird in public. Yeah. There's probably a whole episode or a bigger discussion in exactly where that line is, and there's definitely some grey areas and room for different people to interpret things differently and have their own perspectives. But to me, there's a very clear difference between you spanking me in the middle of a supermarket, and you subtly whispering in my ear in the supermarket and insulting me in a way that we find hot. Yeah. There's a difference there where one of those things is highly likely to cause distress and offence to people. Yeah. And another is something that, unless people are really making an effort to eavesdrop in what we're doing, it affects nobody. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. And then I also won't do anything that will impact on your career, your study, or relationships with friends and family members. Yeah. So, we've talked about a really good example of kind of career, I suppose, would be every now and again we do some kind of break time violence where I make you come up to the office or I come downstairs with something horrible and I hit you with it while you're on a break or on your lunch. Me doing that while you're on an important Teams meeting with important people. It is not okay. No. Because that's leading into areas of the life where I have no right to. Yeah, that would not only be a consent issue, but also would likely lead to me losing my job. Yeah. So that's a major negative impact on me as well as others. Yeah. Yeah. And the last bit on there is about neither of us can enter into or seek separate romantic relationships.
Yeah.
So we put that in the limits and exclusions, so to kind of sit alongside our agreement about other people for sexual play.
Yeah.
We are, romantically monogamous, and monogamish, probably.
Yeah.
It is a silly word, but
I like it. I really like monogamish as a term.
Yeah. It for.
And the thing I like as well about this being in the contract is, although the contract is very much about the power exchange element of our relationship, not really about our romantic relationship, the contract is also something that places a lot of limitations around my right to revoke consent, including to leave the relationship. So if you were to form a romantic relationship with someone else, if you were to emotionally cheat on me, I would hope that we would both be committed enough to this to want to resolve that problem and stay together. But it is important that I have the right to go, actually, you've betrayed my trust to a point where I want to walk away from this. If this part wasn't in the contract, I wouldn't have the right officially, with what we agreed, to break up with you for cheating on me. And I certainly hope that we're never at that point. But it's an important right to have. So that's why, even though that's not really a DS thing, it's in the contract because it needs to be.
Yeah, and for all we said at the start, that this isn't a legally binding contract. We're acting like it is.
Yeah, we're making a commitment.
That commitment. Yeah. So it's important to have that in there. So
we then have a section about contract review. So our original contract was a set term contract for a year, and this section in that contract was about, as we come to the end of the contract, we need to start reviewing it a month before. We need to be preparing to sign a replacement. So it's a little different now because this contract is designed to be one that can run indefinitely. But we are agreed still that we're going to do an annual review of this. So as well as the monthly review that we do of just our relationship in general, do a contract review once a year. The outcome of that may be that we just leave the contract exactly as it is and look at it again in a year. Or it might be that we agree some changes, which we would approach as equals, that we're both going to have equal input into. And then if we do decide to make changes to it, we would create a new contract, which we would then sign, and that would immediately replace this one. Yeah. And that might be another indefinite contract. I can't imagine there'd be a reason why we'd want to step that back to a limited term, but we would have that option if we wanted to. Yeah. Literally anything that's in this contract could be changed at that point. And as long as we both agree it, we'll sign it and move forward with that. Yeah. And this section also talks about the monthly check-in as well, which I've touched on and is something that we talked about quite a lot in our episode on communication. Which the monthly check-in, it would be quite rare that we would look in any depth at the contract, but we do tend to look at the rules in quite a lot of detail and also talk about things like play, events, things that are kind of going on for us on a day-to-day. So it's a really good, just general checkup of how things are. Yeah. But again, I like that, there's a clause in there about kind of that monthly check-in and the annual check-in, I suppose, is not a replacement for just talking to each other. Yeah. As we go. We don't necessarily save up things for for a review. If something comes up, we talk about it. If we've got a suggestion for a new rule or a change to the rule, we talk about it. We might say, let's put a pin in it and then agree that when we have our review. Yeah. But it's an ongoing discussion. So the assumption within the contract and the rules is that both owner and slave will abide by them at all times. But this lays out how there might be some times where there might be reasons where we would benefit from time-limited adjustments to either the contract itself or the rules. It makes it really clear that both of us have the responsibility to communicate that, whether it's about ourselves or the other person. So it's easy to say, I've got flu, I need to just be able to lie in bed and do nothing all week. It's maybe a little bit harder to challenge another person and say, your mental health doesn't seem to be in a good place right now and I feel like you're doing too much. I want you to kind of ease off. Yeah. This makes it clear we both have the responsibility to do that because that's an important thing too. Yeah, no, I agree. And then if that happens, we agree what the adjustment is. We have a conversation about how long we might need to do that for. Yeah. And then we would revert back. Yeah, and the time that we revert back is by mutual agreement. So this section really does sort of pull it back to that foundation of equality that I talk about, where yes, the authority is transferred in this relationship. Yes, the power is transferred in this relationship. But when it comes to our mutual well-being, we are both involved in making decisions together to make sure that that's protected. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And then I think this is the last substantive section anyway, is around kind of termination and breach of contract. And again, all good contracts have something in about termination. But this is, again, a really one of those sections which really drives home
the exchange of power
Yeah.
and the different kind of positions we have accepted as part of this contract, where essentially I can terminate the contract for any reason at any time.
Yeah.
That I could just do that, which just seems wild to say out loud, because I can't imagine a situation where I would. Whereas you don't have a right to terminate the contract unless there are specific situations that arise, I suppose, in terms of breach of contract. So I have the right to punish you for breach of contract without terminating it. So if you break a rule, that is technically a breach of the contract, but I don't have to terminate. I wouldn't terminate it for those reasons.
And there's nothing in here that ever says you have to terminate it. It's you have that option, but you can also choose to punish or choose to communicate through things and resolve things however you want.
But on your side of it, if I breach any of my responsibilities as set out in the contract, then you can terminate it at your discretion. Which I suppose goes back to when we were talking about kind of romantic relationships. That would be it's a really clear example of the kind of thing that might happen in some version of reality, where actually that would be too far for you, and that gives you that kind of ability within the context of this contract to terminate it. I think this is a really interesting one because, like I say, drives home the power exchange in it. But it is also one of those where you just kind of think you would talk about it, though. Yeah.
And that's why it doesn't say either of us ever has to terminate the contract. It's if we are the people that we think we are, we're going to try to talk our way through any problems, whether that's our relationship as a whole or specifically the power exchange elements of it. We're going to want to repair it before we give up on it. But it's important that both of us have at least some right to do that. Things that really are irreparable. I think it's important to mention as well that this is specifically, it's a contract for our power exchange. So in theory, either of us could terminate the contract without necessarily ending our relationship. I think because power exchange and our romantic relationship are so tangled up with each other, it's quite unlikely that we would ever be ending one and not the other. But theoretically we could. So if we were going through some kind of major relationship problems, if there had been something like cheating or really major dishonesty or a huge trust in either direction, we might say, we can't be doing this right now. We need to focus on the basics and then come back to this. So that there is a possible version of this where the contract is terminated, but that doesn't mean we're breaking up. Hopefully neither of us ever have to use it. No. That section is there to have in case, but hopefully never needed.
No, that's true. So that's the main section.
That is. All that's left is our signatures. Which we will not be showing because there is no video, and also because you don't get the full government names, I'm afraid.
No. That's our contract. It's taken some joint effort and joint work to put it together, but it feels like a really good basis for our power exchange, and there's a lot of it that drives home what we're trying to achieve through that exchange of power. And it's one of those things where on the face of it, it feels like kind of fairly boring admin stuff and is quite formal. And a little bit dry, and some of my own prejudices about really high protocol TPE type total power exchange type dynamics in the past is that they feel a little bit stiff. That's been my perception of it in the past, but we have a really high protocol dynamic, but I don't think necessarily having a formal contract and a formal set of rules is boring or particularly formal. I really like that. I really, not just because I'm a contract nerd, but really enjoyed that process of drafting the contract up and getting the rules right.
Yeah, it felt very intimate, and it feels like a real opportunity to reflect on. At that time, it was to reflect on the 10 months of the relationship that we've had so far, and how far we'd come, how much we'd learned about each other, how much we had committed to meeting each other's needs, how good our communication was, all of that stuff. The contract kind of distills it down and gives you a chance to look at your relationship summed up in a couple of pages, really. And go, wow, we made that.
Yeah, we do that. We have made that together, which is really it's really nice. It's really lovely, and I think it's an opportunity that I think is sometimes missing in not in all relationships, but in some relationships. I think it's an opportunity to reflect on the relationship when we do the reviews, when we do the admin and the updating.
Yes.
I think the best way I can describe it is to use a work example. where I used to have a job where I would be doing like service improvement and looking at processes and stuff like that. And they had those kind of people like me doing that job separate to the people who were doing the work, doing the process day to day, is because sometimes you are so busy doing the work that you don't have time to think about the work.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of analogy kind of applies equally to relationships. Sometimes you're so busy just being in the relationship that you're not really consciously thinking about the relationship. You're just doing it. And the admin forces us to have that kind of reflective time.
Yeah.
To actually specifically and consciously sit down and think about our relationship, and think about our dynamic and what's going well, what could be better, what do we want to change, what are our plans, where are we going, which I think is really special.
Yeah.
It's really important that we have that alongside just the way that we talk to each other day to day, but having those kind of fixed points where we come together and go, okay, let's talk about this. I think a lot of people in a lot of relationships would benefit from a little bit of that, maybe not to the extent of having a really formal legal contract.
Yeah.
But that conscious effort.
Yeah, because most relationships, most non-kinky and even a lot of kinky relationships, for sure don't need a contract. But maybe there's something there that people could steal in the taking the time to talk through exactly what the structure of the relationship is. Maybe if it never even goes down in writing, but taking that time, going through that process like we did when we were coming up with our contract, of talking about what are the values that we want to bring into this relationship, what are the commitments that we're making to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, I would go.
You think everyone needs a contract?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be as legalese as perhaps ours is, but that was done for a specific purpose.
Yeah.
You know, we had a reason for writing it the way that we did. But you know, there is a clause in our contract which says if there are any, talks about interpretation, talks about disagreement. If you're entering into a relationship and what you've got is a verbal agreement, verbal contract, no one's ever going to remember that perfectly.
Yeah.
So actually I think there is something for me about actually let's write it down. These are the things that we promise each other.
Yeah.
You know, like when people get married and they write their own vows.
Yeah.
And that's an opportunity for people to say to each other, these are the promises that I make.
Yeah.
To you in this relationship. There's something in that for me.
I suppose that's what marriage is it's the contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
For a couple.
Yeah.
Except that's one where the vows might be personal, but the contract is something that's set by the government or by your religion or a combination of the two.
Yeah.
Where this is like, what does this commitment mean to us? Let's write it from scratch.
Yeah. I just think there's something, I don't know, maybe I'm being ridiculous about it. I just think there's something in that. I think if more couples did that sort of thing, no matter the type of relationship they've got, then it would probably save a lot of arguments.
Probably. I definitely feel like, there's debate happens about are kinky people better at communicating or not, and I don't think that we necessarily are at all. But there is definitely something to the way that kink encourages you to think about communication and the structuring of your relationship and the way that you sort of personalise relationships and intimacy and communication to fit the needs of the people involved. Or I think if I woke up one day and was like, I'm just not kinky anymore, I want a completely vanilla relationship and a completely vanilla sex life, there is so much stuff from this period of my life that I would carry forward with me. Things like having a monthly check-in and having some sort of commitments for the relationship written down somewhere.
Yeah.
Because it's really valuable in any type of relationship.
Yeah. I think it is. And, there you go. That's my 2 pence worth.
I think that was an excellent way to round things off with a tangent with a good point to it.
Excellent. I do love a good tangent.
You do.
And a good point. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Don't Scare the Newbies.
You can support us on Patreon for bonus content and head to kirizal.com for my blog and links to everywhere else that you can follow me. See you next time.